Welcome to Bears Country Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Shortino, at Mr. Shorty. We're going to try something a little bit different here today on Bears Country Podcast. We're going to do a game week preview with a Vikings fan. This is going to be a lot of fun. So let's get to that right for this.
Bears Country. Where is it? It's in your man cave. Your home. Your car. Your local bar. Your city, state. It's across the world. It's in your heart. And it's here. The Bears Country Podcast.
Welcome, everyone. It is Vikings week, and I'm trying something special here. We have Chris Schad from the Viking Age Podcast, and I am just curious to dive into this with you on this game week as our two teams match up this weekend. Chris, thank you very much for coming on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. 3-1 so far to start the season for the Vikings, and a home matchup against the Bears, although they are coming back from London this week. But everybody here, we're not really sure what to think of this team. I mean, 3-1 is pretty good. It's actually just the sixth time they've been 3-1 or better since 2005. So wow. Some rare territory. We don't know what to do with ourselves over here. So it's definitely an interesting game coming in on Sunday.
That's exactly why I wanted to bring a Vikings fan on, to get your perspective of this so I don't have to do that work myself. Not to sit here and bash each other, but to be respectful with each other and kind of talk about our teams. Mm-hmm. You know, we started off 2-1. We were pretty hopeful going into that Giants game ourselves, and it just ends up looking like, you know, one of those horrible losses, not one of those horrible wins. You know, it's one of those games we had in the bag, and it was just right within reach, I should say, most of the game, even down to the final play. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it was a 45-second play or something. That was like the most hopeful play that the Bears fans had in that entire game. Our running game has been good. Our passing game has been something left to desire, but I've been feeling like we're trying to get the running game established to try to build the young quarterback along into the offense so that the game starts to come to him rather than him trying to force it. So that's my perspective on our 2-2 start. So go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, your team's kind of weird right now. It's just in a weird spot. I think everybody has the connotation that the Bears are tanking in order to get a high draft pick next year. Ryan Poles, who was a finalist for the Minnesota Vikings job before the Bears got to him first. You know, Carter Pewter-Schmidt, your owner, decided to pick him up at the airport, wine and dine him. He's like, I think I'm going to stay in Chicago. And he proceeded to rip everything to the studs over there. You have a young quarterback in Justin Fields, who I think coming into the season, a lot of people had high expectations for. And then the Bears don't get him any receivers, no offensive line help or anything else. They're having him throw 10 times a game. You know, that 2-1 start, or even like the 2-2 start, it hasn't exactly been a murderer's row. It's been Trey Lance in a monsoon. We're not sure if he's good, and now he's injured. Right. You had Aaron Rodgers, who is probably high on drugs right now, but right. He's still functional. That's impressive, I guess. And then
he's winning MVPs.
Yeah. Winning MVPs while seeing Lucky from the Lucky Charms box or whatever it is.
Yeah, he's following the rabbit down the hole.
Yeah. The white rabbit. Then you have, who was it? The Texans, Davis Mills. And then you had the Giants. So, I mean, they could be 3-1 in their own right, but I think there's a lot of flaws on this team. And I don't think a lot of those are going to be fixed until we're 1 or 2 years down the road with Ryan Poles. So I don't know. They're a weird team to figure out right now. I still think they're going to be one of the worst in the league. And that's not slamming the team. That's not anything. That's just, I think, the reality of their situation. It's what the Bears want, because I don't think this staff really wants anything to do with Justin Fields. I don't think a lot of the
That's your really? Yeah. Is that your perspective?
That is. I just feel that way. I mean, if you have a young quarterback like that, I think you want to at least try to work it out or put him in a situation where he has weapons, he has things around him to make him successful. And I think Ryan Poles, I reluctantly use the word failed to describe this because I don't think he even tried. So
see,
that's the way I see it.
I appreciate that outside perspective of this, because I have the Homer perspective of going, oh, well, he took 5 draft picks and turned them into 11. And he's got a lot of those 11 players out on the field playing, including a 5th round starting left tackle. I took the Homer optimistic approach that they were going to rely on the excellence of Justin Fields to help develop one of these, 1-year bargain basement, signings at the receiver position that they picked up. That was my hope going into the season. I love hearing your perspective as a Vikings fan. Clearly, I've seen some of your podcasts. You guys do an excellent job over there. Very well organized.
Thank you.
You have a lot of, we talked before this, you have a lot of journalism skills. So your perspective on this is actually something that I appreciate. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I mean, you mentioned the whole, I mean, it's really funny how similar the Vikings and the Bears are. Like, I've been thinking about a potential article for zonecoverage.com this week. You can check out all my work there. Bring me the news. I write a lot of stuff. I kind of go back and forth and thinking, the Vikings tried to trade up for Justin Fields on draft day. And I wonder if the Vikings had made that deal, what happens? Is Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman still there?
Right.
Does he have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen to throw to instead of Darnell Mooney and Eric Pringle? Like, I think
Byron Pringle or St. Brown.
Yeah.
Pringle's out now he's on IR.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that was the staple of the Vikings for years in the draft, is that they would trade down and down and down. I mean, one of the more infamous trades that I think did Rick Spielman in was in that draft where he traded down from, I think it was 12 to 20 something. He got Christian Darrisaw out of the air, who has been fantastic in the first 4 games, but then he got 3 third round picks, I think, in that deal alone, and 4 total. Wyatt Davis was a bust. Kellen Mond was released. Patrick Jones is a rotational pass rusher, and Chad Surratt also got released. So, I mean, that's just how it was. And I think that's why Mike Zimmer stopped talking to him for multiple months. And that's why neither of them are no longer here. So you mentioned the whole trading down thing. Us in Minnesota, there's part of us that think we dodged a bullet because Ryan Poles is doing a lot of the things that Rick Spielman did while running the Vikings. And I mean, it's weird. Like, I can't clock off about this 3-1 because I think it's a counterfeit 3-1. But
right. If the Bears were sitting here 3-1, I would feel the same way. Like, okay, I know I picked them to be, you can laugh. I picked them to be 11-6, but the reasons why I did that were because of the unknown factor of playing the Niners and the Packers to start the season off. Usually those are winnable games because there's not enough game film with a new head coach. They were playing Green Bay in Green Bay. That's, to me, you want them in the beginning of the season in Green Bay if you're going to play them. And if you have the added advantage of not having any game film really to go off of, that's where I was getting my wins from in the beginning of the season. And I personally thought we were going to be 4-0 at this point. And then we get to this game. And this is the game that started to worry me because I know what the weapons that the Vikings have, but I was also a little concerned Two, with them having a whole new regime change like the Bears did as well. And my feeling was once we get that far into the season, we have a little more game film on the Vikings, that it might help the Bears coaching staff to game plan better than it would if they would have faced the Vikings in game one. So as we get to this game, though, I don't know. I mean, now I'm a little hesitant. I'm a little worried. I don't know what this team is, and like you said, you don't really know what the Vikings are either. I know that you guys have excellent receivers, and this is just from my because I'd like to hear your perspective on Justin Fields, and I'll give you mine on Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins is just he's such a cerebral minded person. It's almost like he can overthink himself, and when you put him in primetime games, it seems like those are the those are the games where it's almost like he's thinking too much and it fails him, and he seems to fail on those games. What worries me about this game playing the Vikings is it's a noon game. It's a 1:00 game. That's a game that's I think is going to give Kirk Cousins a little bit of like he's not being watched by that many more people. And he's going to find his comfort zone a little bit easier, and that's what worries me because he does have the targets to throw to. And Dalvin Cook, I mean, the guy's electricity in a bottle. I mean, he can light it up. He hasn't hit 100 yards yet, but he's close. And he's playing a pretty porous Bears defensive front. We're lacking that fat, big, Ted Washington, Vince Wilfork type of nose tackle, and we did get Armon Watts from you guys. He's been serviceable, but I mean, he's not really the three technique. I mean, he might be a decent three technique if he had that pig next to him, but it's just not panning out for us on the defensive line.
So I'll start with Kirk Cousins and kind of just reinforce what you were saying there. I'm a big pro wrestling fan. So this is like when Ultimate Warrior, one of his promos was like talking about the planets, the Grimlap system aligning and like him having ultimate powers or whatever. Like that's Kirk Cousins on a Sunday against a sub 500 opponent at home. Like everything is lined up for a good game. The thing with Kirk Cousins this year is that there's been a lot of changes. Like there's a new offensive scheme with Kevin O'Connell. The receivers have picking up routes. But like the weird thing is the receivers have been really excited about this. Like Justin Jefferson was like, he said Cooper Kupp rolls so much you could make a t-shirt out of it. Like Adam Thielen was just excited, like wow, this is amazing. Like we keep attacking. We don't run on 2nd and 10. This is incredible. And then you had like Kirk getting up to the podium and be like, I don't know, man. I got to make flashcards and I got to learn all the terminology. And like Kevin O'Connell said, I should make this throw, but I don't never make this throw because that would be an interception. The interceptions are bad. And I think
right.
Like people blame Mike Zimmer for brainwashing him, but like Arif Hassan of The Athletic, or I guess now he writes for Pro Football Network. I think that's the name of the site now, but he wrote a big piece over at The Athletic in February about his mindset and everything else and how he feels like he's a CEO. There was this play in college that he opened his book. I believe it's called Game Changers or something. I haven't read it, but in that book, the first thing he mentions is that play when he was at Michigan State against Notre Dame, he threw an interception that ended the game. And he's like, I'm never going to have that do it again. And like, to me, it reminds me of the scene in Step Brothers where Dale like is reluctant about singing because his brother and his friends made fun of him at a talent show once. Like, it's just like, maybe some Notre Dame students were chanting, Kirk has a, if you've seen the movie, but I mean, he just overthinks things. And I think too, you're right. He is very cerebral. If you show enough pre-snap, he will carve you up. Like he is above average quarterback. Problem is the Vikings are paying him $40 million. And when you see him on the field right now, his brain is going 100 miles an hour and he's like a step behind. So like when a play is going, he's pumping, he's hitching, he's gritting his teeth. There's a shot in that Philadelphia game where the Vikings got smoked. They had the sky cam over the huddle and his eyes are like the size of silver dollars, just like barking out the plays. So, I mean, that's the thing he's got to get over. And there was always going to be a learning curve with this offense. I think Alex Boone was on Score North, which is a podcast outlet in the cities. He was saying it takes about 4 or 5 weeks to learn an offense. We're in week 5. We're playing the Chicago Bears. This is a team that the Vikings should hammer. No offense to anybody. I know it's a Bears podcast. The Vikings should come out and step on their neck on Sunday. The problem is, like, I don't think they're so sure of themselves on offense. And, you know, on defense, you talk about it too. Like, their defense is bend, don't break. They've allowed 3 passing touchdowns all year, but they're 4th in passing yards allowed, I believe. So their goal is don't give up touchdowns. Patrick Peterson said that to Cameron Dantzler in a film session. Like, hey, as long as you don't give up a touchdown, we're fine. And right now, they're 12th in points allowed. They're, I think, in the top 5 in yards allowed. And it's working to this date. I mean, people have been a little bit upset because they can't get pressure. Danielle Hunter has been on a milk carton in the first 4 games. But this is a defense that doesn't get a lot of pass rush, doesn't get a lot of pressure. Kevin O'Connell has hinted a little more blitzing, which I think is good because Justin Fields has struggled against pressure. Like, the Vikings are a good team. I just don't know if they're a team that can make noise against a good team. Again, no offense. We're not going to find out this week because I don't think the Bears are a good team. I'm sorry. I know it's a Bears podcast. I'm not trying to get anybody throwing hands.
You're not saying anything that's not the consensus of the rest of the country. So, right, I mean,
yeah,
you are talking to a homer on a Bears fan or on a Bears podcast, but
and that's why I'm treading lightly.
No, I mean, the national, even the local media narrative is that this was the number 1 pick in the draft team. I mean, that's a little bit ridiculous. It's only happened twice in the 100+ year history of the Bears. So that's not going to happen. But if I'm not being a homer, I can understand why people would think that they're not going to win many games. I mean, they might have 6 wins on the season, you know, like most people think. Me, I'm still hoping for at least 10 now, since I'm a game behind on my 11-6 prediction. But, you know, the thing about these games, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, like, how do you, like, I know how I feel about the Packers. I know how I feel about when we play the Lions, and I know how I feel about when we play the Vikings, and they're all different feelings, and I'm sure you have the same feeling. I'll tell you mine. I'd like to know yours. When we play the Packers, it's just pretty much put an L for both. I tried to have optimism this year, but just put an L for both games. The Lions, I feel like, they're like the little kid in the playground that we can just, you know, push around, you know, whenever we want. And then it's like the Vikings. It's like, I guess if we put it in the playground terms, the Packers are like they're just bullying us on the playground, right? And then, like, the Vikings, it seems like we kind of push each other back and forth, like yeah. You know, and then we grab the Lions and just kind of give them a noogie, you know? And how do you feel about the NFC North? Is that perspective kind of the same for you, or do you feel like the Lions are a hit or miss team? Because sometimes they get you too. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, we'll start with the top. Like, we obviously hate the Packers. Like, that's easy. Like, Viking fans, it just boils.
I think the other 3, we could probably take all 3 of the other podcasters and make our own podcast about hating the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, you know, let's talk about the Packers a little bit. Their quarterback is like, I don't know, David Bowie on freaking Magical Mystery Tour or whatever the hell you want to call it right now. I don't know any David Bowie albums, but I'm sure
he's like the Beatles when they got into playing the you know,
when
the Beatles went off, they made the White Album
and that stuff. Yeah. Like, I don't know, like, Packer fans, like, there's just this, like, section of Packer fans is just like, why? Like they're just so delusional and so crazed. And it sucks because the football gods have come down and they have blessed them with 30 straight years of Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm 36. I can't tell it. Like, the only times I remember the Packers sucking is like when Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone. That's it. Like, there's Brett Favre. Maybe he had a rough season or 2, but I mean, outside of that, the Packers have always been good. So yeah, there's just natural jealousy there. The Bears are kind of hit and miss. Like, some years it's kind of like, I don't care about the Bears. They're not good. Like, I don't want to lose to the Bears, but I don't want to I don't go.
You're not
into
worried
them
about
being
him.
like, I don't think about the Bears unless like, the Super Bowl year with Lance Briggs, Peanut Tillman, Brian Urlacher. I hated those guys. Like I could not. Brian Urlacher is like my most hated football player, not named Aaron Rodgers. Like Brian Urlacher just annoyed me because he was like the most football person ever, and just seemed like he's probably a very smart guy, but he just seemed like a box of rocks, like the Old Spice commercial where he's like, behold the sword of Urlacher, and he comes on screen like Urlacher went to Swagger to Urlacher, yeah, Old Spice,
Right.
And I mean, Akeem Hicks, like, shoot that man in the sun as much as he's just destroyed the Vikings over the past year. Like, I was happy when the Bears come and they're like, the Vikings could sign him. I'm like, no, he's 31. Don't do this, please. Don't do this. But like, I don't hate the Bears. I mean,
so you're kind of like me. It's like, we kind of go.
Yeah.
Well, you can't beat me up. I can't beat you up. So I'm gonna go give the Lions a noogie.
when we cross paths, it's a little bit shoving. Obviously, don't want to lose to you guys, but I mean, it's. I don't think like, oh yeah, screw the Bears. Like the Lions, I feel sympathetic for them because I've met Lions fans who are like awesome, like coolest people in the world. And I mean, Dan Campbell, it's like Homer Simpson running the power plant. Like
I know.
it's just watching him like, how did you get my friend? She actually theorized that Dan Campbell won the job. He went out drinking with the Lions CEO, and he's like, they got a tower of beer, and he's like, I bet you can't drink that tower of beer. And Dan Campbell was like, if I drink it, you have to hire me. You're on. And then he just slammed it, and they're like, oh shit. So
yeah, that's a perfect analogy. Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. That's a hell of a visual too, isn't it?
But you kind of wanted to be your coach too, right?
Right. Yeah.
Especially watching Hard Knocks. It's like, yeah, that guy's kind of cool. Yeah.
He is the ultimate baby face in the NFL right now. Like, it is impossible to hate Dan Campbell, even if you're in the same division with the Lions. Like, okay, if you're good, that's cool. Like, because it's good for Dan Campbell, right? But like,
even their the running backs coach, what's his name?
Deuce Staley.
Deuce Staley. Man, watching him on Hard Knocks is actually it's good entertainment. Like,
yeah,
my wife was just reciting something he said yesterday because she just can't stop laughing at him.
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel the same way about the Lions. It's like you're almost you almost feel bad for the fans, right? Because they just, what, have they ever won a championship? I don't think they have.
I don't think it's been like the 50s or something.
If they did,
they've never even been to a Super Bowl.
Right.
Like,
yeah. So
yeah.
I feel for them. Do you know? Do you guys ever do live podcasts?
The Viking Age goes live every Monday and Thursday. Yes.
Do you guys have Don Burr in your chat room?
Don Burr?
Yeah.
Who is Don Burr?
Oh my goodness! You don't know who Don Burr is? I thought Don Burr was just synonymous. So Don Burr is this guy who trolls every single live Bears podcast there is, whether it's the Bears holding a press conference, whether it's this podcast, whether it's anything that's on the Ballroom Network, who we're in association with. We do a live show on their Monday night network. He's on, and he comes in and he's just like, Detroit versus everybody. And, he's what he does is he likes to come into chat and get everyone all frazzled in chat so that they're not even talking about them anymore. They're just talking to him and about him. And he goes back and forth. I can't believe he's not on Vikings and Packers podcasts doing the same thing. I just assumed he did. Everybody in Bears podcast world knows who Don Burr is. In fact, we have this made for him. Where is it? For when he comes up into chat. I mean, it's like, I just assumed you did.
No, the worst we've gotten so far, and we just started the Viking Age podcast back in February. So, I mean, the worst we've had is like when they played the Niners in the preseason, like 30 people jumped on and it was just like bang, bang, Niner gang and like pumping up Trey Lance and stuff. And we're like, no, we like Trey Lance too. Like, he's from Minnesota.
Right. Right.
Now his career's probably screwed, but whatever.
Oh, I know. That's
Kyle
so
Shanahan
unfortunate.
didn't even want him anyway, so there was that, But
Why? Who did he want? Did he want Mac Jones?
He brought Kirk Cousins. He wanted.
Right.
He loves Kirk Cousins, but
right.
Kirk wasn't
From back
available,
in Washington.
so they traded up for Trey Lance.
Well, they traded for Garoppolo.
And that was way back then. I mean, after the 2020 season, Kirk probably could have been had because that was kind of an iffy thing. Like he threw the touchdown in New Orleans because Kyle Rudolph pushed off. I'll admit it. Yeah, it happened. So and that whole victory in New Orleans a couple years ago in the playoffs, I think it was 2019 actually. Kind of screw with the Vikings franchise long term because Mike Zimmer was on the hot seat. People didn't know if they would extend Kirk Cousins because he was going in the final year of his deal. He throws that game-winning touchdown. The Wolves fall back in love with Zimmer because he made the defensive game plan, which I'm going to take Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin, move them to the inside. And so they extended Zimmer, they extended Spielman, they extended Cousins. Kevin Stefanski went to Cleveland, and they re-upped with Cousins. So he couldn't go to San Francisco. So the 49ers were like, yeah, all right, let's trade up for a quarterback. And then they burned a whole bunch of draft picks when they just could have just played Jimmy Garoppolo. But here we are.
I was surprised they took Trey Lance with that third pick. That seemed a little considering all they gave up pick. I thought that was going to be Fields.
And I think a lot of people saw the tools that Trey Lance has. I mean, I think Josh Allen breaking out right before that draft did wonders for his draft stock because they said, here's a big guy. He's got a big arm. He's mobile. Dante Culpepper and then they, people kind of fell over themselves and the 49ers bit hard. So,
I wanted to ask you, how do you feel? Like you mentioned that you don't think that this regime they're into Justin. How do you feel about Justin Fields as a Vikings fan?
So I was pretty big on Justin Fields coming into that draft because he was very accurate downfield. He was a good passer at Ohio State. He was very mobile. I think he had a very good workout before the draft too. And them not trading up for Fields, I was furious when the Bears got him. I wanted Justin Fields on this team because, like I said, I think there was a pretty good support system here. Now, looking back on it and what happened with Kellen Mond, that was basically what happened. They didn't get Justin Fields, so they traded down for Darrisaw. Great pick because he looks awesome. So I can't really complain with the first round there. But Rick Spielman goes down in the third round and he takes Kellen Mond. He's like, oh yeah, he's just like Justin Fields. He's just Kellen Mond couldn't throw downfield. He was mobile. He was a dual threat quarterback like Justin Fields, but he was not as good as a passer. So Kellen Mond goes in. Mike Zimmer wants nothing to do with him. And there's a good chance if they had taken Justin Fields, Mike Zimmer might have locked Justin Fields in the closet as well. So I mean, I don't really know what happens, but look at the infrastructure that would have been around Justin Fields. Like I mentioned, you're throwing to Adam Thielen, you're throwing to Justin Jefferson, you're throwing to KJ Osborne, Irv Smith Jr. I'm not a big fan of his, but I mean, that's an upgrade over Cole Kmet. That's his name, right? I'm blanking right now.
Cole Kmet,
yep. And then in the backfield, you got Dalvin Cook over David Montgomery. So I mean,
I was worried.
Yeah,
I was worried.
And if you have Justin Fields sit for a year, especially now, if they went through the coaching change anyway, does Kevin O'Connell go in there and Justin Fields have a light bulb click on? I don't know, but I was a big Justin Fields fan. Last year was kind of disappointing, but I mean, you're willing to chalk that up to Matt Nagy and everything else. And this year, Matt Eberflus came in and I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with Justin Fields. I don't feel like he's in their long-term plans. And I feel like, they got their eyes on the 2023 draft and they're hoping for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
Oh God, I hope not.
That would be great for you guys. I think both those guys are. Or you say
I don't think either
not, or I hope that.
I hope not. I don't think either of those are an upgrade over Justin Fields. I mean, Stroud, he's thrown some good balls in college, but I don't think he's an upgrade over Justin Fields. Bryce Young just seems the kid throws a nice ball. He's got a nice flick of the wrist, but he just seems too small. If that happened, if the Bears ended up with one of the let's say they had the second pick and they didn't draft Will Anderson or trade down for someone that wanted the quarterback and they could still get a Will Anderson or something like that, that would infuriate me if they just decided to trade Fields and start over with a quarterback again. I think that the Nagy era just has to be chalked up to a wash. He's a rookie again.
But are you going to go, hey, he's a rookie in year 3? Because I don't think he's going to develop this year. Like they won't even let him throw. They only let him throw 10 times against the Packers.
Well, I have a theory about that. My theory is that, they adopted this this outside zone running scheme. I think that they're trying to really establish that running game to not only help their offensive line that they're trying to piece together, kind of get into a rhythm, because we know that running the ball is every offensive lineman likes to run the ball over throwing the ball. And I just think they're trying to get the running game going to ease him into the offense so that the offense can start to come to him over the course of time, because, there's so many different plays within a play. And I think that's what a lot of the problems that they're having in the passing game right now is certain routes they're changing based on what happened post snap. And that play within the play wasn't caught by Fields. And I think he just needs time to develop. He's learning a brand new offense. It's year 1 again, all over again with the brand new offense, brand new coaching scheme. It's going to take a while to learn the plays within the plays. There's a coach that does a Bears podcast. His name is Coach T, and he mentioned that there's basically for every one single passing play concept, there's like 6 different ways to stop that one passing play. So you take 200 of them and you add 6 different ways to stop 200 different passing plays. There's going to be all those different plays within the play, like I said. And I think he's smart enough. I think that he just has happy feet right now because the offensive line is not giving him the time to throw the ball. He's running for his life. So I think if he can just get through this year healthy, I think by the end of the season, we're going to start to see some growth with his passing game.
I think the rookie quarterback clock is ticking there as well, though. Because, how long is it going to take to get Justin Fields a support system in Chicago?
Right.
Khalil Herbert is good as a second-year back. You got him. And I'm looking ahead. I think David Montgomery leaves, as an outsider opinion. I think this is his last year in Chicago.
Me too.
I think, your defense needs to be built up. Your everything.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see the Bears, especially after the first month, going to Justin Fields after a couple years and being like, hey, sorry it took so long. Here's a, here's a big old
$400 million contract.
No, they're going to draft their own guy because Ryan Poles has no attachment to Justin Fields whatsoever. And I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he just didn't like him when he was in Kansas City or what. They had Mahomes. They were never going to draft him, right? But they do analyze these things and kind of just look at who's available.
Sure.
So I don't know.
I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong.
Yeah, and that's fine. You guys have gone through so many quarterbacks. Like,
it's ridiculous.
You're probably breaking your fingers, crossing them to hope that Justin Fields pans out. Like, the Vikings are the same way.
How weird it was for me last year to not scout a quarterback in the draft. It was I was lost. I didn't know what to do with myself. I'm like, why am I looking at wide receivers?
We have Kirk Cousins and we still scout quarterbacks every year. Like, it's just like, can we do better? Can we?
Well, even with an Aaron Rodgers on your team, I'm always a proponent of draft a quarterback as much as you can. Obviously not every single year, but if there's a quarterback sitting there, and that was one of the things I loved about what the Redskins at the time did with the RG3 Kirk Cousins draft. They drafted 2 quarterbacks in the same draft.
Yeah.
RG3 with like the second pick and Kirk Cousins with like the 3rd round pick. I was like, that's how you do it. And RG3 failed them. And look where they had Kirk Cousins playing well for him before he left for Minnesota.
It's about drafting a guy and then developing them. The Vikings never did it. And part of that is because Kirk does not want to be pushed. He wants very easy. He wants guaranteed contracts. He wants the easy way. And, I'm not, and again, Kirk has played well. He's had 2 game-winning drives the last 2 weeks. So I don't, and then week 1, he played phenomenal where they had 3-4 months to prepare for the Packers. So,
right.
This isn't stomping all over Kirk, but at the same time, he's kind of got that kind of, I don't want to call it entitled because, he was a walk-on at Michigan State. He had to, earn his money in Washington and then, get the fully guaranteed deal here. But he only wants fully guaranteed contracts. And again, that's the problem. Like if he was a tick higher in the tiers, like if he was, I'm not going to say Brady or Mahomes.
Top 10.
Yeah, no, well, not even like maybe a little even higher than top 10, like top 6, top 7. That's okay to pay $40 million for that guy. But when your guy is kind of a fringe top 10 QB, that's where you run into problems. And that's why the Vikings have holes on defense. That's why they have holes in their offensive line. It's a huge conversation topic in Minnesota.
Sure, I bet it is.
Yeah,
it is for us too. Like he set the market for no reason. Because what happened right after he got that big contract? Well, I think Garoppolo was next and got a bigger one than him. And then Aaron Rodgers was like, excuse me, I have to make more money than those guys because I'm better.
Yeah.
So
acknowledge
me. Yeah. And then that raised the quarterback. It's kind of like Christian Kirk goes out and signs this crazy contract for Jacksonville. And he's like setting the market for mid-tier receivers now. Like, thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we're happy with that with Justin Jefferson's contract coming too.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
Are you afraid you might lose him because of that Kirk Cousins contract, or is what is that coming up?
So Kirk is signed through next year. So Justin Jefferson is due for a contract this upcoming May. So
are you worried you're going to lose him?
I don't think so. I think Jefferson stays here, especially. If they win and they make the playoffs, Jefferson will at least see, hey, things are going well, unless they go to Kirk and give him like another guaranteed 2-year extension or something. He might go, okay, guys, let's think about this here. I don't know. And does Justin Jefferson want to start over with a rookie quarterback? It depends on who is that quarterback. An aggressive trade up for Bryce Young? Is it an aggressive trade up for CJ Stroud? Is it Anthony Richardson from Florida? That's another guy that's going to be in the conversation. This is a very interesting quarterback class. And if the Vikings see a guy get off that cheap contract, you pay Justin Jefferson, and then you fill in the rest of the roster.
Well, Chris, why don't we get to the injury report here? Because I know you have to get going here soon. So let's pull up the injury report and kind of talk about this. And then we can go over what we think our scores of the game will be. And then we can wrap this up. So it looks like you guys, Andrew Booth, Zadarius Smith, and Cameron Dantzler, it looks like those guys are playing, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the most part. Andrew Booth has been in and out of the lineup. He said right after the draft, I haven't been healthy since high school, which does not really sound like a guy you want to burn a second-round pick on. But
right.
He has not played yet this season. Zadarius Smith played 30 snaps against the Saints and got a sack, so I'm not too concerned about him. And Cameron Dantzler at full practice today. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's not good for us because we have, Montgomery's out. Jalen Jones is out. Jalen Johnson's out. Jalen Johnson is going to be desperately needed, I guess, against Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
Ryan Griffin's probably going to play. Dane Cruikshank is probably out. Matthew Adams probably going to play. But then who's not on here is Cody Whitehair, who is on IR now. So, but the Bears are getting back N'Keal Harry for this game. So maybe hopefully that's the guy with the big catch radius that he needs, because he's been lacking that the last. He threw 2 passes in the last game that if he just had that catch radius receiver, that number 1 at the end of the ball, the chances of catching it were at least one of them would have been caught. That's for sure. So in the Bears fans' perspective, hopefully that leads to an uptick in their passing game. Someone that can help out Mooney a little bit. But you guys really don't. Your injury report is looking pretty good, so I don't know. And us being Jalen Johnson, that scares me. So, anything that scares you about the Bears?
Would I offend you if I said not really?
No, you wouldn't.
No, I'm not, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. Like I said, I think
I did. No, you're not being a jerk. I was just simply asking you. Yeah. No, if you could say no.
There's not much. I mean, the way that they've played so far, this should be a smash spot for the Vikings. Like, if they're a big boy team, they should go out. They should hang 30, 40 points on the Bears, and they should just clobber the snot out of them. Because here's the thing with the Vikings. They're 3-1. Great. Like I said, it hasn't happened very often, since 2005. I said it's been 6 times, right? 6 times in the past 17 years. Mm-hmm. Like, when you think about it, like, these games have been Mike Zimmer games with different results. And eventually that pendulum swings back the other way. You look at last year, every Viking fan loves to talk about Dalvin Cook fumbling in Cincinnati, Greg Joseph missing in Arizona, a late drive to Cooper Rush, the game-winning drive in Detroit. And like, well, Kevin O'Connell will come, we'll win these games, we'll make better decisions, and we'll be a 12 or 13 win team. There were also games last year that the Vikings won that they had no business winning. That first game against Detroit, they should have lost because Mike Zimmer whipped out the conservative playbook and Kirk Cousins had to make a last-minute drive so Greg Joseph could hit a 58-yard field goal. You have the Pittsburgh game where they were up 29-0 and they needed Pat Freiermuth to drop a touchdown pass in the end zone just to win the game. There's another one. I mean, the Carolina game, they blew another big lead in that game. Eventually the pendulum swings back and you're going to start losing some of these games. And how do you react to it? The good news is the Vikings have a cushion right now where it's not going to kill them that it has in recent years. But eventually they need to start playing dominant football because when they get to the playoffs, that's not going to beat some of the top teams in the NFC. So, I mean, to feel better about this team, the Vikings need to clobber the Bears on Sunday.
I couldn't agree more. If I was going to be saying that from a Vikings fan's perspective, I would think that would be the game that you're looking for. You know, who are you playing after the Bears?
They go to Miami.
Okay.
And that's
is it possible? Is it possible that though sometimes could this be a trap game?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. They're coming back from London. So, I mean,
yeah,
when the schedule was made, everybody was kind of like, yeah, it's the Bears, but they could be jet lagged. Kevin O'Connell has tried to stop this because they were only out in London, I think, for 60 hours because they just flew over, landed,
played.
I don't even think they practiced in London, and then they just played and flew back. So,
yeah, those London games are ridiculous. I don't know why they're stressing out the players like that. And what are they going to do? Start a 4-team division out there and have everyone flying all over the damn globe to play games? That's ridiculous.
I would not be surprised if there is a London team.
Well, that would be even worse if there was just one team, because one team within a division would not only would screw up the entire balance of, the 4-team divisions, but then you have one team flying all, coming back and forth every single game just for more than half the season.
And I don't think the NFL needs another team like 32. But I mean, I swear they will find, maybe they'll ship Jacksonville out there. I don't know, but I mean, there's a lot of money to be made over there.
If they did it, If they did it, they would have to make it a 4-team division out there. They would have to. I mean, it would not work any other way, in my opinion. But what the hell do I know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I want to thank you very much for taking the time as a Lions fan, as a Vikings fan, to come on here on a Bears podcast and kind of chat up some football with me for this Vikings preview week. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Anything you want to plug before we go?
Yeah, if you're interested in following the Vikings or anything else, I write for zonecoverage.com. You can check us out. I don't think we have a Bears vertical, but we have a Packers vertical as well. So you can do a little scouting there. I also write at Bring Me the News, which is a Minnesota-based site. We do a lot of bite-sized sports. So again, if you want to see what's going on in your division, I mean, it's not just Chicago Bears, Chicago White Sox are also in the Twins division. I was going to say Chicago Blackhawks. If you're a Blackhawks fan, we do a lot of wild stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. Sometimes I like to read about the opposing team. So check that out. And of course, the Viking Age podcast every Monday and Thursday night. I do it with Adam Patrick from 6:15 to 7 p.m. Might be a little bit fluctuating because of my schedule lately, but you can check us out there as well.
Chris, appreciate you very much for coming on Bears Country Podcast today. Hope you guys like this content. If you do, please subscribe, set your notifications, because we have a lot more fun stuff like this coming. Until next time, Bears.